morning, everyone, and welcome to this latest media engagement hosted by Prime Minister Dr. The Right Honorable Keith Mitchell. I am Press Secretary Philomena Robertson. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. As you would recall, we started this series of media engagement some months ago, basically inviting a couple of journalists at a time for this in-person session with the Prime Minister. This morning, I have the honor of introducing to you Ms. Anisha Samuel, who's representing the Grenadian Voice, as well as Kalistra Faria and Linda Straker, who are both independent journalists. Now, this has been the Prime Minister's way of maintaining that level of critical engagement with the local media, while at the same time ensuring that we are in keeping with the limitations set by the COVID-19 regulations. Welcome, ladies. Welcome to you, Prime Minister. It's an all-female cast this morning, Prime Minister.
You know, I have no difficulty with that. Good morning, everybody, and good morning to our media representatives here, and of course to the audience, the length and breadth of our country and beyond. At this stage of what is taking place in our country, I think it's the most critical issue, as I see it, is the issue of being able to return our country to the best normal that we can, as we used to be before COVID-19. And in that sense, therefore, the emphasis has to be on vaccination, and that our duty as a country to encourage each and every one of us to vaccinate and get your 2 doses so that we can get back to our normal activities. In that sense, therefore, I want to report from the information that I was given yesterday that there are about 18,200 persons in our country that has received the first dose of COVID-19 AstraZeneca vaccine, and 9,200 persons are fully vaccinated. Clearly, while we commend that number, the persons who have done it, it's certainly not meeting our expectation, and therefore we are trying to do everything possible to increase the level of vaccination by several initiatives. In fact, only yesterday, a group of us met to look at various initiatives that can be taken at the community and national level to hopefully encourage and increase persons' initiative to vaccinate as a whole. So clearly we're doing all that we can. The Ministry of Health and the COVID team would be making appropriate announcement about those initiatives. I just want to again make the point that we want to thank the COVID the workers, those workers, the frontline workers that have given service in helping to vaccinate and to do all the work that are necessary as our borders open. And we want to continue to give commendation to those workers. I also want to make the point that, as we know, the announcement came last week that we have been able to share with our brothers and sisters in Trinidad 10,000 of our AstraZeneca vaccine, and we have been able to get 21,000 additional doses of vaccine of the same AstraZeneca from the COVAX facility, which is, of course, the United Nations initiative. We have, of course, have got a lot of thanks from the people of Trinidad and Tobago for helping our brothers and sisters in this time. We also want to report that my discussion with the U.S. ambassador, and of course the announcement has in fact been made by President Biden, that the U.S. has taken an initiative to make 6 million doses of different vaccines available to Latin America and the Caribbean. And the U.S. ambassador in a discussion with me last week pointed out that the U.S. is putting great emphasis on the Caribbean. We could not tell us how much specific amounts will be given to Grenada, but of course, if 6 million doses are being made available to the Latin America and the Caribbean, the chances are high that we see that the kind of quota that we'll get will certainly will take us close to what we believe will be our needs as far as vaccines are concerned. So, in addition, colleagues, I just want to point out that we are quite aware that this virus has marginalized a lot of people in our country. I've repeated it over and over, and that's why we make the point that those of us who are receiving a salary must understand that there are a lot of us and a lot of people in the country who have lost income and have not been earning any income and have their commitments and their family to take care of. And therefore, while we do what we can to aid those who are continuing to work and have difficulties, we have to spend a lot of time in trying to help those who have nothing at all. And we have listed a number of individuals, those vendors who normally operate with the tourism season, which has gone completely dead. They are the lowest of the level in the country as far as wages are concerned. They were left without anything. Or taxi drivers who benefited so well from the booming tourism activity in the country, they have left with little or no income. And we can just name the Liat workers who some of them have worked over 30 years with Liat now literally not flying. Most of them have been for almost a year have been without any income whatsoever. So with that in mind, the government has not stopped attempting to look at ways we can in fact provide some stimulus, additional stimulus to the one we did at the beginning of the period of the active COVID-19 activity in our country. In that sense, therefore, we have been able to negotiate with the Caribbean Development Bank and the International Development Bank. The facility would be through the Caribbean Development Bank with very soft loan of $8.95 million US, which works out approximately to about $24 million. That initiative to help the marginalized persons and persons who have affected the most. And therefore, the Ministry of Finance has been working with the Ministry of Social Development and also engaging some of our social partners in the whole question of the areas and the persons that could be supported with that initiative that we are embarking on. It must be noted that they're working closely, the Ministry of Finance is working very closely with the Caribbean Development Bank in coming up with the format and of course and the policy and proposals in which that will be used as a basis for disbursement of those stimulus. From indication, it looks like the resources, the actual monies would be available sometime early August, September for the latest. So in other words, we'd expect to start disbursement around that particular time. So what is being done now is a lot of the hard work, the detailed work in the proposals and working out the format. So that's one. As far as the issue of the 4%, as it's well known, that has been a problem with particularly the teachers, because it appears that we cannot say that the public workers has shown any major unhappiness with government's decision to indicate its inability to meet that demand at this particular time. But we we have done in serious negotiation, the government negotiating team, and also the teachers union, which has been the main advocate for pay at this particular time, or the necessary 4% increase. There have been ongoing discussions with the teachers union, and it appears that they are getting closer and closer to some understanding and agreement. I will not want to be able to give the specifics, because clearly that since the negotiation is not completed and there isn't a signed agreement, it would not make sense to do. But I'm optimistic that we're heading in the right direction. My only concern is, given where we are, I don't see why it is need for further public demonstration of activities outside. It does not send the right message. One would have thought that since we are getting closer and closer to an arrangement, that there will be a clear understanding there is no need for that public display of dissent at this particular time. But I just want to make it clear to all and sundry that the decision to government to do whatever it can in the context of this whole negotiations has two basic reasons for our reaching where we are today. One, we have certainly seen an uptick in revenue as far as the economy is concerned, the fiscal situation. It's not where it was in 2019 when we signed the agreement, so it's not there yet, but it's certainly a far improvement from where we were last year, around the middle of last year. So that is one reason we think that we have gone closer to some arrangement. The second fundamental reason for that compromise where we're heading has to do with the impact on the education of our children. I want to be clear, as I said to my cabinet colleagues over and over, and they all agree, that very few of us would be around here in our position if it was not for the level of education support that we got to be where we are. Most of us come from very poor families, and without education, we would not be here. And therefore, it would be difficult for us to supervise the loss of educational opportunities for children as this dispute continues as it is at this particular time. So we would not want to see further disruption in the education system and the impact on the children of the country. So if anything, I think the public demonstration has been a disincentive, not an incentive for attempting to solve this thing. It's not an incentive. This basic reasons I gave are the two reasons I gave you. And if anything else, the demonstration has in fact not helped the atmosphere at all. It is not. So I want to be clear that there will be no question that the government, because of public dissent demonstration, that the government has moved to do that. That is not bother me, because that has to do with the politics. And I don't think the government has a political problem, but it certainly has a problem in the education of our children, and I certainly feel that has to be priority. The other point I really want to make is some points on the Ministry of Works, some initiative, as you're aware, that in fact I'm facing it as the parliamentary representative for Northwest St. George's, the major disruption in road activity and road traffic because of the problem we've had in Molinier. The studies have been done. I think we made an announcement to that effect, but I just want to reinforce it, yeah? We were at the point of thinking that we had to do a bypass road, and it was not possible to fix the present problem and continue the road as it is right now. But the studies have shown that we can, in fact, the cheapest method of going forward has to be going back to where the road is and doing some physical work. It is going to cost cheaper than creating a new bypass as an alternative, or shoring up the side of the sea, which will cost a lot more money than any other options that we're talking about. So I think the people in Molina would be extremely happy. They have been extremely happy to know that the road will continue to where it is right now. But it will take some time. I don't see this. The projection of the Ministry of Works is because of the design and all the things that must be done, is that I don't see us expecting the work to start before the end of the year. Which means, and then when it starts, it'll probably take about 16 to 18 months to complete. So there will be a continued sacrifice from the people of the northwest area and the western side of the country as far as traffic is concerned. And with having said that, it means that we cannot wait to continue the present traffic situation as it is right now, where we have to pass through Jones Road. As you know, that was a narrow piece of road, very difficult in the Montmorris area, and it has disrupted the lives of the people of Montmorris and the community as a whole. And therefore, the ministry has been looking at alternative to what we have at the present time, and therefore we have now decided that the Mancuma Road, which is, if you head in from Bushes Road Bridge to going up to Grenville to New Hampshire, as soon as you pass that last bridge, on the right-hand side, there's a road called Mancuma that a lot of our parents and grandparents used to use as a major road heading to the northeast of the St. George's. That road would now be reconstructed with a bridge that was broken. And so plans already in train. They have got the design already. The ministry expect by July to start that road. It would mean that when that road is done, they are saying they expect to finish it before the end of the year, which means therefore that traffic coming from all the western, all the buses, because the Grenville Road is one of the best piece of road in the country right now. So if you then turn around and fix the Mancuma Road and broaden it as the plan has been to do, it means that we'll probably be one of the better roads in the country. So there will be no reason for a bus leaving or a transport leaving St. Patrick's or St. Mark's or St. John's, or even Brizan area in my own constituency to head to Merlin here to take this narrow path of road, which is not the best road in the country at this time. They would head to Grenville and then take Mancuma, and they'll be almost in St. George's in quick time. In fact, I'm looking forward to this because every time I have to visit my mother, I have to go through this treacherous piece of road through either going through Willis, through that section of road in Constantine, which is not the best road at this time, or pass through the Montmorris area, which of course I mentioned before is not the best. And then when I'm coming back, the problem again emerges. So I'm certainly looking forward to that as an individual myself. I just want to record also, I think it's well known that we have a serious shortage of cement in the country. For one, there are major construction activities taking place, and the loss of the cement operation in Trinidad Cement Company, this really close operation with the COVID-19 virus raging in Trinidad at this time. We had clearly had to seek alternative, and because of the single market economy, we have to get some permission from the CARICOM Secretariat to be able to bring in cement from the extra region. That application has been made by several contractors. In fact, some already got cement on the road coming here, and some cases have brought in some already. So we expect to see that supply. What we will do, anytime you have to buy something that you can buy within the region because of the CSME, and you have to go outside, you have to pay the extra regional duties. What Cabinet will do is waive the extra regional duties, so the cement price will not be as costly as it would be if we did not waive that price. So I think in general, I think this is some of the things I wanted to mention. Just quickly, with the hurricane season beginning here, as we know, the announcement has already come, and we expect we might have an above normal activity as far as hurricane can. We pray that with the virus already raging, we can't afford any other major disaster, but we have to prepare ourselves accordingly. The National Disaster Management Agency also is reporting that the construction of the National Emergency Operations Centers at Monjulu, and of course in Bel Air, in Carriacou, that has almost been completed. This was funded by the U.S. Southern Command, and they are now looking at outfitting the facilities so that we can have a formal opening as soon as possible. Just the last point I want to raise, and it's well reported recently of the incident yesterday or the day before, with the death of this lady who was killed. And to make the point that we recognize the problem of domestic violence as being a serious one over the years in our country, and sometimes a lot of it is happening and it does not get reported. And I think there's a responsibility of all of us, government, social partners, the people themselves, and in fact I would say also women folks, all of them, all of us have to be involved in the whole process of confronting this problem. Because many times things are happening, some of us know it and we won't report it. Some women will watch their children being abused and destroyed and saying nothing about it. The communities watch things that they know happening in certain areas, they won't report it because it's not happening to them. And I think as a country, all of us need to feel a sense of pain when any one citizen is being abused and being destroyed. So I make this point for what it's worth. So colleagues, I think I have said enough, and it's your turn to be able to ask the questions that you wish to ask. I don't know which one of the ladies want to open bat.
I think Anisha from The Voice is ready. Anisha, you have the floor.
So go ahead, Anisha.
Good morning, Mr. PM. My questions first are vaccine related. Response to the vaccine rollout indicates a significant number of citizens have chosen not to take the vaccine. So with no vaccines for persons under 18, what is the government's plan going forward? The next question, given the increased responsibilities the pandemic has created for police officers, as the Minister of National Security, do you see merit in increasing the size of the RGPF at this time?
Okay. Yeah, well, for the first one, I think it's, as I mentioned at the beginning of the opening statement, I think we all have to realize, as long as we do not have herd immunity in the country, which means that most of us are vaccinated, there is a threat to every single one of us and to our country's development. And it therefore means that the responsibility of each of us, those of us who have taken the decision, have a responsibility to also educate. And I've had to do a lot of that and been highly successful with almost everybody I've spoken to get them to understand the necessity to do it. I think that's the responsibility of everyone. Because we have to agree, there's been a lot of misinformation. And if I was not in my own position as I am, I'd probably be second guessing too. So because of the extent, and some of it has come from certain quarters that should never be involved in any misinformation, unfortunately. So I could understand the reservations. So we have a lot of work to do, and that's why we continue to do it. And I mentioned earlier on, there is this session that we had yesterday where a number of persons met, and we're looking at a number of innovative steps to be able to encourage people, because we know, and therefore I want to add, the media, for example, and the outlets, the stations, on whatever media institutions that exist, have a responsibility. Because I know the media must be suffering right now radio, TV stations, and so on are not going to be making the kind of money they normally make because you're not going to get the businesses are not up, so they are affected. So the media has a role. So the media should not be looking for funding for every announcement they make. Because they have a role, they have a responsibility, and they have something to gain by vaccination, and the country is returning to as much economic activity as possible. All businesses have a responsibility. There's that impression sometimes, you get the impression that this is a government thing. It's not a government thing, it's not an NNP thing, it's not an NDC thing. It is we thing. And therefore, it's so important for us, to all of us to be involved. Those of us involved in service in the country will have to recognize that if we are providing a service, we are going to be affected. We are being affected by the lack of the virus, the fact that the virus is still clearly a serious threat. So we have a responsibility. Restaurants, hotels, everybody has to be involved. The workers must be involved because the more people are vaccinated, the more return to normal, the more jobs are going to be created, the better. So the trade union movement has a serious responsibility. And I call on them to play their role. This is not a government thing. This is not a business thing. It is all a we thing, so to speak. So I'm making the point that there's something. Now you're going to the 18-year-old, but first of all, I think we have to concentrate heavily on the above 18 group. We'll get to the question of 18 and less. As you know, studies are being done and tests are being done at different age groups, and so far the evidence looks pretty good that there's no serious effect. So far, based on the studies, the research has not been completed, so we can't make an outright statement, but so far it looks good from the point that everyone should get vaccination as soon as possible. You asked me about the RGPF. No, I don't think there is a need for additional policemen at this particular time. Let's face it, we do any additional hiring of persons in the public service means that we have to have more money. And we're talking about we don't even have money for the commitments that we made to people. The 4% is an example. So any massive hiring of persons in any capacity can be a problem. What we have to do is pool our resources together, and that is what the commissioner has been doing with his men, and of course get supplementing it with persons that are available to help the RGPF in its work at this particular time. So that is where we are as far as that is concerned.
Okay, relating to our roads, recently you admitted that the conditions of our roads are very bad, which is a pain to motorists and passengers on their daily commute. So how soon can we see remedial works taking place to address the huge potholes and unevenness and slippage? And another related question regarding the Molyneux road, you mentioned the cheapest, but we know that sometimes the cheapest may not be the best. So while government is moving for what it can afford, will it be sustainable and not just a quick fix?
Yeah, I think if you noticed, you probably would have seen a number of roads being patched, particularly going through the Bolio Granatang area. A lot of work is taking place. Even on my side, the northwest and the south, there's some patching taking place, but that's not enough. A lot of these roads have to be reconstructed. There are two problems we're facing right now. The capacity of the plant to provide the necessary materials has been a problem. For example, the Ministry of Work reported to me yesterday that they went to the plant and they could not get material because they were short of bitumen. That is a problem for us. So that has been. Sometimes also the availability of crushing materials, stones. So there need to be more than one operation in the country, and there are initiatives to have more than one plant and more than one crushing operations where we can have, because there will be significant additional work would be expected, not just in the present road conditions that have to be corrected, but additional work based on the major development that's coming that will require lots of crushing material and asphalt operations in the country as a whole. So there are problems. The ministry is working, and as you know, my main start as Minister of Government was in roads, so I have a passion for this, and I know how much roads has enormous impact on how people see a government, because when we did it right, we gained a lot of political support, and I personally benefited in terms of my image as a Minister of Government from a perception that the roads are being dealt with. So I know that has enormous impact, not just on the people and the vehicles and so on, but also on how people see the country and the atmosphere in the country as a whole, economically and otherwise. Molyneux, no, I think it's not just the cheapest, sir. It is cheapest, yes, but that's not the main reason for the decision. Don't forget the technical studies had shown 3 options, and it showed that we can take care of the problem if we kept the road and do some work on both sides, below, close to the sea, and at the top, because there's some slippage of that. The main problem was the sinking of the area itself. So that was the main thing, and they feel they could take care of that with that decision. If they had to go to the bypass road, they would have to move a lot of people, they'd have to do a number of things. So it's not just technical, there's social and other implications involved, and of course the cost. And if we went down to the sea, we'd have to build literally a bridge and a road spanning a wide area from Grand Mall up to Molyneux. You're talking over $50–60 million. That does not make sense to us. And we won't have the resources to do so, for one, and certainly since we have a reasonable alternative that is going to protect the people of the area and transport through the area, then we chose that direction.
Thank you, Anisha. Calistro, anything from you?
Good morning, Prime Minister. You're not hearing me? Okay, good. Well, I won't say thank you for the invitation because I didn't get one. I'm a seat filler today. My first question, the fallout with former Ambassador Newfield, Prime Minister, I guess you've had time to reflect by now. Your performance in your response in the Parliament. Is there anything about that you feel that you could have done differently?
No, Calistro, my response was very appropriate to the attack on the country and the leadership of the country. So, and I think we did what we had to do. And plus, I think the important thing is to separate the fact of the representation the person had as opposed to the business activity. And that is precisely where we are. So the CBI committee has been working with the investor in dealing with the project. He's no longer a representative of the country, and that's where we are. So I don't know that I have anything to rethink. I thought my statement was very appropriate for the type of attack that was laid in the country, and I have moved on from there.
A lot of people may not have moved on from hearing what was described as racist sentiments being presented in the Parliament of the country. So, that drew a lot of attention. Do you believe, Prime Minister, that those kinds of sentiments in the Parliament from the Prime Minister, given the state of the world where we are in the world today, was appropriate, sir?
I said I made a statement and I'm comfortable with it, and I have moved on. If other people move on, that's for them, but I have moved on. And I have nothing to apologize for, and I have nothing to regret. Very appropriate statements, and let's move on.
And on the issue of Charles Lew, since we're talking about diplomats and so on, what's the status with Charles Lew, sir?
Charles Lew was known to have been a representative of the country, as you know, in China. I don't know there is any update as far as that situation is concerned. You know, he had some difficulties, and that's where it is as far as I know. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs has not reported on any specific situation as far as he's concerned at this particular time. So unless I have information to the contrary, I can't tell you anything more.
Well, at the time when he got into a lot of difficulties, not a little, sir, the government did say that they would address his status. He was holding a diplomatic passport. He was holding a diplomatic position, sir. He was involved in and had judgments against him on some major issues involving a lot of money. At this point in time, what is Grenada's association?
From what I
with
know,
him?
I believe that the judgments he has dealt with is the problems that he's had. And the fact that he's no longer having issues with that, I think that would certainly be cleared up, as far as I know. And therefore, there's no need to as far as I know, I don't know there's any additional information I have to give.
So he remains a holder of a Grenada diplomatic passport and
I know a decision was taken to deal with it then. I cannot tell you what the latest situation is, and I just told you this a while ago, that I don't know there's any latest information as for that. There may be, but I cannot tell you.
Can you say whether he's still associated with the Mount Hartman project?
He has some association, but he's not the main person at this time.
Some association?
Yes,
What's
definitely.
his level of association?
I said he has some association.
Yes,
I am not party to the extent of it. I'll just tell you, I believe there's some association. But I'm pretty sure he's not the main investor at this particular time. Okay?
Okay. I have more questions.
You can ask like two more, then we take like a break and come back around.
Oh, we're following that. On the Mount Hartman project as well, I'm understanding that the plan has changed, but there's been no announcement to the public, no details on the change of the Mount Hartman plan. Can you speak to that?
Well, what any change has been, as far as I know, is the fact that you have more activity than was originally planned. You're still going to have a major hotel activity and golf course activity, and there's additional plan for a university, which would be dedicated more to the areas, not to this medical sciences that the St. George University has now a monopoly over, but other serious areas of training in the technology and, of course, in different aspects of academic pursuits that will involve clearly enormous potential opportunities for the country as a whole. That's the change. In other words, the project is going to be a bigger project than was originally planned. And so far, so good.
Okay, my last question in this round, I guess. You're no doubt seeking another term. You announced a while back that you ain't going nowhere yet. What is the one transformative idea that you will present to the Grenadian people going forward after decades at the helm of the country?
Well, first of all, let me make it very clear that I would love to not have to pursue one additional term as a parliamentarian. I would have loved not to do that. But it appears that I have to do it, and I will do it. But let me make the point. There are quite a number of activities, as you can see, the initiative for major development projects. Seeing that through would be a critical component of the future development for this country. Seeing the actual implementation of that Livera project with that enormous potential and transforming, you're talking about transformation, transforming the economy of the entire north of the country, including CARICOM PD Martinique, with the level of investment available. Having serious development of major projects, possibly 2 hotels in St. David's, with a range group, providing enormous amount of jobs and economic activity. Clearly that would be transformational with particularly the eastern side of the country. A major project in Mount Hartman, as I just mentioned, here you're talking opportunities for training in technology, and you know that's my baby. And all the areas of science would bring enormous benefits. So Grenadians would have to go to North America, or even to areas that they must go to and travel and cost them a lot of money. There will be opportunities for that, and also it will of course impact on the economy of the country with thousands of students coming from all over the world into Grenada. Certainly would bring enormous benefits. That to me also is very transformational, and having a golf course at a certain standard here would also be a significant boost. So job potential, economic spin-off activity, development of education. As I said before, my vision for the country is to create a educated, healthy, and prosperous society. And I think we're heading in that direction. The education advancement with that major initiative, and more development in education as we are doing, and with the projects and opportunity before us, with the development of healthcare in the country and moving towards NHI as an opportunity for creating available healthcare for all citizens of the country, which is really the objective of the NHI, at available cost to individual persons and the country as a whole. That to me would lead to prosperity in the country. So if you're talking transformational, that would be my objective.
Linda, over to you.
Good morning, Mr. Prime Minister. I have a number of questions that I came with, but then based on what you said, I need some either clarity or additional information, so I'm going to ask those first. Starting with vaccine. We have seen recently out of Antigua where the government decided that some people now was going to take the vaccine within a certain time. If it's illegal, you get extension. Or
no, I didn't hear that clearly. Repeat.
Antigua, the Prime Minister announced if you're an illegal immigrant on your stay, the amount of time, you get a 4 months extension if you take the vaccine in Antigua as someone who would have entered the country and close to your expiry date of living. I don't know if you were aware of that. That came out earlier in the week.
I'm not aware of the specifics, but certainly that's not the plan for Grenada.
Well, the other one is that they announced, I think it was last week, was the gift of land. To some people, this is a form of bribery. It's a game of chance. You did say earlier on that the COVID committee is coming up with several initiatives. Would any of these initiatives be something that falls under a game of chance to encourage persons to become vaccinated?
Yeah, there are possibilities, but certainly not land. We don't have any land to give. In fact, every day people come to me looking for a piece of land to build a house or to do something, agricultural activities and so on. So we don't have land to give.
So our initiative would not include
land.
Gambling, quote unquote, and things
well,
like that.
I don't know if you want to call it gambling. For example, if Lotto initiates a special game for vaccinated people, and the government will certainly endorse that and support it. It may also mean the government could look at the possibility of initiating one also, because the plan is to get people vaccinated, because the government is hurting as not enough people is vaccinated to give us the herd immunity we need. Revenue is being affected, and the country is being affected in general. So if we have to initiate it, I wouldn't call it bribe. I call it incentive to be able to get people to do what we believe it's absolutely necessary. I remember going around the blocks in recent times, and I told the young men, get vaccinated and we'll try. The game's coming, the cricket is coming. We may be able to, those of you who are now going and showing that you're getting vaccinated, we have no problem in encouraging you to do so and give you tickets to see the game if you are vaccinated, because we're stipulating that as a major condition for anyone going to the stadium to watch the game. So there could be, as I said, I don't want to speak specifically to any decision because no decision has been made, but the team is coming up with a number of initiatives and we are not going to say at this point anything is out of that equation.
Earlier, I think I had a question in the early days of your chatting with us about carnival.
Yes.
And you said that there will be no formal carnival. Now that we're seeing a mass gathering of persons, and one of the condition is fully vaccinated, is there any decision with regard to some form of carnival official celebration now because of the amount of persons who are now
Yes.
vaccinated, those people who are also coming in, it is
Yes. I suppose what we don't want to say is there is a change in the fact that they will have what you call carnival. There could be cultural activities, which some of it is associated with what takes place in carnival. But I think the minute you start saying there is carnival, that means Monday night mass, a massive jab all over the place, that sort of thing. I think you want to be careful. Until we have herd immunity, I think you want to be extremely careful. But if the promoters, for example, are moving ahead and promoting cultural activities and people are vaccinated as a condition to be participants in the activity, then certainly I think the COVID committee is looking seriously at that. And there are other initiatives of social activities that can be permitted with the condition of vaccination. And for example, if there might be in a small village, a group want to play a certain mass or want to do that, and they are all vaccinated and they apply for permission, I think the work will be done and permission will be given if the vaccination component is part of the process. So I wouldn't call it government move into carnival, but I would call it allowance of cultural activities. Because let's face it, people are under stress. We have to realize, as much as we want to keep almost every activity out, we have to have outlets for people. And we are mindful of that. We as human beings, we are social animals. And the more you try to put unnecessary control on us, the more we might revolt. So this is better to do it, certain limitations and activities, but at the same time give people an opportunity to have some serious social interactions.
Does that mean that there will not be a bill going to the Parliament removing the 2 holidays this year as it was done last year?
We have not discussed that.
Earlier on you mentioned the CDB and IDB stimulus package of 8.2 million on the soft loan. Can you tell us what is the interest rate and how much years it will be for, how much grace period that will involve? And by the time, and please also tell us the Monkuma Road, who is funding that project and what is the cost, please? And whether or not a contract has been already awarded, because you said work is most likely going to start in July.
Yes, the government is going to be funding this, because to wait to apply to a loan will certainly, you have to go through all the tendering process and the application of loan and all the funding from international institutions will cause you serious delays. We can't afford this, and the country's economy is being affected negatively by the lack of that particular road. So that will be funded, and we might be looking at a sole source, because if you have to go through all the tendering process, it holds up the project and causes us a lot of unnecessary economic problems, because as someone reported that the busmen and the traffickers and drivers are complaining of the effect on their vehicles and the cost, what it's costing them in maintenance and so on, is because of the road situation. So it will help government and at the same time will help the people as a whole. So we'll make the necessary sacrifice to do so.
This the loan from CDB, the interest rate and the grace and so on.
What we know, since the IDB is involved, there's interest, the loan, that what we're getting from the institution will be very low in terms of almost similar to IDA, and IDA is 0.75%. I haven't seen the exact document, but I know it's going to be very low. And you have a 10-year grace and 40 years to repay. That is the IDA component of the World Bank. Assuming it's close to that from indications, then it would be very small in terms of the loan payment. But the question of whether in fact in the stimulus we're making some of that available for businesses and requiring them to repay will make the conditions very soft in going forward. But most of it will be grant support to the various parties.
And that is specifically under COVID funding for economic response?
Yes, you'd have to be. Yes.
Okay, I don't know how much time. Right. Okay. My other question has to do, in recent times, we would have seen an amendment to the Immigration Act, increasing fines and so forth. Is that amendment a direct response to what is happening regionally with increasing illegal immigrant, or it is a case of something that is happening specific for Grenada?
It is specific for Grenada, because I think one of the things that we are looking at, some of the fees that we charge for activity in the country, some of them are 50 years old and 70 years old. And let's face it, one of the fundamental basis for government revenue is its fees and services. Because, as you know, when we came into government in 95, everyone was paying income tax except for a few persons. We have moved that to the point where if you were making about 5,000 initially, you were not paying, and then we moved it down, I think it's to 36,000 a year, something like this. So, in other words, income taxes used to be the sole source of government revenue from individuals. So, we moved away from that, so the revenue government gets has to come from services, and therefore people have to pay for services that they receive. And therefore we have to look at many of the areas where services are given, and even the paperwork for the services is not compensated for.
If I could just add two more. One, Petro-Caribe and our national debt. The constant public debt bulletin is showing Petro-Caribe as having among the most debt. What is government decision with regard to dealing with that Petro-Caribe public debt?
Well,
How it's going to be going forward?
yes, most of the countries in the Caribbean has received assurances from the Venezuelan government. In fact, there were letters to the effect that they expect to cancel most of it. But until we have the effective letter from the bank saying so, we still have to put it down as a possible debt. But the hope of most of the Caribbean countries, particularly the OECS, is that that debt will be cancelled over a period of time.
So the company itself, what will become of the company? Is it going to
Oh no, there'll be no longer Petro-Caribe.
All right. During your last election campaign, we had major announcements regarding our oil and natural gas.
Yes.
Can you tell us and give us an update as to what is the status of it in the aftermath of COVID? News of it has been practically silent. What is the current status of our oil and gas initiative?
Well, they've had renewed interest as far as the drilling. You know, we did some drilling already, as you know, and lots of resources were spent. During the period of the pandemic, it is well known that the price of oil dropped dramatically. Right? In fact, the U.S., which was heavily investing in fracking as a source of energy, it realized they had to stop because the cost of drilling and bringing the energy to the surface was far more than the price they're getting for it. So because of that, so that affected even Guyana suffered from the fact that the cost of the energy has dropped dramatically. But we've seen an uptick again, and notice recently we've seen some renewed interest, and therefore the Ministry of Energy is reporting that we expect to see not long from now some further development in that area.
Are you at liberty to say who is showing that renewed interest and the one that
Well, the one group that we had before, the Russian group, which was the guys who spent an enormous amount of money, hundreds of millions of dollars have been spent. They are still there, but we have seen other major companies have now indicated they're interested in looking at, because we have several sites that are possible for investment and for possible oil oil extracts. So there could be a possibility of other major companies like Texaco and others who might be interested in looking seriously at the prospects of oil here.
You have anything else along that line, Linda?
No, I have other things.
Okay, all right, we'll go back to Anisha.
It seems the political landscape may be changing with a new political party being formed and an old one being revived. So what are your views on the political leadership in Grenada now and looking ahead to the next general elections? And my next question for now. Recently, there have been reports of sporadic power outages at different parts of the island. And for the past, this was something labeled a thing of the past. The concern is, now that government is in charge, can you assure that the regular maintenance of the equipment and so will be upheld so that there can be a continued supply of electricity?
Well, first of all, my concentration as political leader of the NNP is to concentrate on the NNP stock. I don't spend time wondering about what's happening outside there. As far as other political parties are concerned, that's a decision for them. So all I can say, probably the more political parties are formed, probably is better for the new national party. So that's all I could comment on. So I wish them all luck. If the parties can bring further new ideas to the political spectrum and benefit the country, then I'm for it. But I am not going to be the one to determine what happens. We are spending a lot of time now organizing. COVID-19 affected the work on the ground politically, but we are now reorganizing our constituency groups at the level of the party, village groups and so on, and the constituency branches throughout the length and breadth of the country. So the NNP is not looking at anyone. I think one thing it must be known, and maybe that's attributed to the success of the new national party. We have spent in government little time on worrying about other parties. In opposition, when we lost government, we didn't go mourning and just spending time attacking the government and running our mouths on politicians. We went on the ground. When we had 2 seats in 1990 and everybody thought we were finished, in 1995, we regained government. Similarly, when we lost in 2008 and everybody thought we were finished, we went on the ground again, corrected our mistakes, and what happened? We won all the seats in the next election, the election then. So we don't spend time running our mouths on people, which is what I believe the opposition in this country has consistently done. Attack Keith Mitchell, run your mouth, make up stories, all kinds of propaganda, briefcase, this, everything. What happens? 15 seats. And you come in again attacking the same person with all kind of propaganda, there might be more licks. We don't spend our time doing this. We just hope. I have offered advice to our political opponents sometimes and say, well, spend your time on correcting your mistakes and build yourself instead of just spending your time on attacking people. You will find yourself be far more successful than you are. But they never take my advice, and I wouldn't want, I could just repeat what I said to them as I've just done. The second thing you mentioned is, I don't think you're correct. There have been shortages of electricity supply in recent times. I recall before WRB shares were bought by the government, there were shortages because there were shortages and nobody said a word. We were very concerned. In fact, when the company was taken over, we realized there was some old equipment and there were initiative by WRB, leadership at the time of electricity, to buy new generators, and there was something in train, and we have kept that. So they landed only last week, I think, Monday or Sunday, a new generator. Unfortunately, we'd have preferred to be something with alternative energy, but it's in fossil fuel again, which is not the best for the country at this particular time. But we didn't want to wait to take the initiative we have to take to bring alternative energy as a source of supply for generating electricity in the country. We wanted to make sure that we protect the country, because the minute you have one little shortage, you say, oh, you see, they can't run it, the government or only WRB. I just always want to report The success of Grand Lake over the years was on the backs of the workers of Grand Lake. Well, not those who owned it, the workers of Grand Lake. They were some of the best workers that the Caribbean has seen, and it was reported to be so and so by several persons. When Montserrat went down, it was the Grenada electricity workers that went up there and got electricity supply from Montserrat back up. And the success of that operation is on the backs of the workers of Grand Lake. As you know, only one person in every case has been brought in as any external person and running Grand Lake. The workers there, the second line management and everybody, as local Grenadians who are doing all the work. We sometimes don't give enough credit to ourselves, you know. We tend to believe everything could be done by foreign persons. You know, it's unfortunate that we don't have enough belief in ourselves. So, but that's all I can say. We have not seen shortages as you mentioned. There were shortages before, not after the company has been taken over.
Okay, it was done before, I think probably last year. Is the government giving consideration to giving relief to vehicle owners, especially those plying the Mount Morris Road, discounts on vehicle parts and so, such as brakes and so? And can you give a status update on the national health insurance? We haven't been hearing anything concrete for a while.
Well, the government has not given consideration to reducing duties and parts. We have not done so. I think it has to be known that the government itself, as we pointed out, we have been pointing out, have a serious problem with cash. And therefore, any serious concession and duties now will affect the already drop in the estimated revenue the country is receiving comparative to 2019. So I don't think we can go that route. The NHI, the consultant group is back on doing what they have to do. We have indicated that consultation has to continue. We want to make sure whatever we do, the final product must be what is considered best for the country. So negotiations continue, consultation continue, and we're looking forward to the end product. The only problem is I think we've lost some valuable time with the COVID-19 virus, and which affected, of course, a lot of the initiatives that the group, Dr. Ned and his team was in fact involved in.
Calestro?
On the issue of leadership of the country, following on from the young lady's question, there's been a lot of debate about the lack of leadership, particularly with the main opposition party in Grenada. But what does it say about your leadership, sir, that after decades, there still is not an alternative identified within the new National Party to take over from you? No viable alternative? Or is it a case that, is it an absence of an alternative? Because you said earlier, when I asked earlier, that you have no choice. What you said, I'm not sure that was your exact words, but the sentiment was you have no choice but to remain in the ring instead of going and put your foot up in Victoria and wave to
Why
me.
Victoria?
And wave to me when I'm going up in the garden.
Why Victoria?
But I understand that you are now one of my townspeople, and so that
don't go there. Well,
I have copyrighted that frame. You have to talk about who you want the money, the charity money to go to. Yes, so I'm not finished with the question yet,
yeah,
sir.
sure, go ahead.
So that, is it a situation where there is no viable alternative within the NNP, or there's just no room for anybody to raise themselves up as a possible alternative to you?
Maybe there are two.
And also, when can we see a clear get a clear idea from you on your retirement plan? You've served the country for so long, you deserve it.
First of all, maybe when you say there's no clear alternative, maybe there are too many alternatives. Maybe that's the problem with anything else. The question is, I think we have very strong alternative capabilities within the New National Party. My colleagues feel strongly that I should not give up at this particular time. The decision was not just mine, let it be very clear. My colleagues in general did not want to hear it at this point in time. But I am confident post the next election that there will be serious moves that will be evident to the country of the possible emergence of opportunities for new leadership in the country. So I'll be certainly very helpful in that regard.
When they were beseeching you to stay on for yet another term, what were the reasons advanced?
No, not another term, just to make sure you run the next time.
To run the next time.
Right.
What reasons did they advance for absolutely needing you to continue to
I think
fill
you'd have
that
to
role?
ask them that question, not me.
You didn't, I mean, you want to go, they want you to stay? You
No.
didn't ask,
I'd say
why do you need me so
You have to ask
much?
them that question. You would have to ask them. When you get a chance and you're at press conference, you can ask them.
Anyone in particular you think I can
I
ask?
suppose anybody could ask.
Anyone, so it was unanimous. Everybody said absolutely not. There is no one who we feel can
I can only say
replace
the
you at this
general
time.
impression, information was that people feel strongly that I should continue, certainly up to the next election.
You talked. Thank you. You talked about science and technology being your baby earlier on. You have been at the front point man on that for the region for quite a while. Can you point to any major regional project or regional achievement that has come to the Caribbean or even to Grenada under your watch?
Well, for one, I can tell you this. Each country has benefited from the advancement of technology within the institution of government. And I have been at the forefront of recommendation at CARICOM heads of government. Some countries have implemented more of the decisions more than others. I think there have been some serious movement in that regard. And I do want to make a point that on Friday, for example, we meeting myself and Prime Minister Mayor Motley together with the CARICOM secretary. They're going to be meeting discussing the question of removal of roaming charges for the entire region. Discussion will be held on Monday with the service providers, Flow and Digicel and others. All the service providers are going to be involved. And so that discussion is going to be held. That would be a major plus. And that initiative had come through the auspices of the CARICOM Secretariat with my leadership at that area of science and technology. So that will be a very revolutionary decision. Hopefully we can see the end of that roaming charges in the region, so that when somebody goes from one country to the next, there should be no reason why there should be additional charges for operating your telephone or your communication system. That should be on board. Hopefully we get buy-in from the service providers.
Speaking of telephones, we had a big fiasco with phone charges and people unauthorized use of government paid mobile phones. An investigation was promised. That was a couple of years ago. It was way before COVID, at the Ministry of Works conference room in a previous news conference. I have certainly not heard anything on it. Was an investigation undertaken? What is the status of the investigation? Where are we at the investigation? Will there be a public announcement? Has anyone paid back any money to the government for use of those phones? A lot of attention was gained with the Sheldon Scott aspect of it.
Yeah, it's not only Sheldon Scott. A lot of others. I find it significant. Some others are well known, but they were never mentioned.
And that's why I said, sir, that has anyone paid back? Because the list was long.
No one, as far as I know, has paid back anything. And there's ongoing accumulation of the information. We know of some information, but that's not all the persons or amounts involved. So the negotiation by the Ministry of Finance and by the Ministry of Infrastructure is certainly ongoing. And when the time comes, there will be certainly announcement to that effect.
It's been quite a while. It's an investigation of
The
that
information,
nature
it takes some
requires-
time. There's, don't forget, we are not in the best easy of times. Don't forget, we have challenges facing all sorts of things happening in the country at this time. So priority has to be given to certain things. The work is ongoing, but certainly slower than I would want it or you would want it, but certainly it's ongoing.
Have you been given any sort of preliminary updates at all? Because quite some time had elapsed since the story broke.
I have not
and before the
received,
pandemic.
I have not received any preliminary update. All I've been told is that work is ongoing by both the Ministry of Infrastructure, who of course is the ministry responsible for telecommunication. Okay.
Anything
Right.
else from you, Calistro?
Would I get another go around me? Or
Do you have any other questions now?
Well, I have other questions.
You can ask a couple more.
Okay. Did I ask about the shrimp farm? Because I have to ask you about that. The Brian Francis investigation as well, so you promised some results on that. But
Wait.
no, Brian Francis, you former...
Brian Francis?
Yes.
I think you have it wrong. Brian Francis?
Yes.
No, I think you have it wrong.
You think?
Brian Francis has not been working with us for a while. Brian Francis was fired from the public service since 1996 and 97, and the court upheld the decision of the government. Then, that's a long time ago, that case is finished. Brian Francis was working recently with the OECS, and there were issues there. That's for the OECS, that's not for me. I'm not in charge of the OECS. And of course, I heard he was working then after the OECS with the Barbados government, and I heard he has been relieved also of that responsibility. So I don't know where this Brian Francis thing come from. It has nothing to do with me. Absolutely nothing to do. I'm surprised it has been asked at all. So maybe it's another name, I don't know, but not Brian Francis.
Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, could be.
Do you have one more before we?
I don't think
go
she
on?
has more because she's asking the wrong questions.
Linda, over to you again.
Thank you very much for that. Mr. Prime Minister, upon returning to office in 2013, one of the focus was the CBI program.
Yes.
Investment. We have seen quite a bit of project launch, project
Yes.
account. And I, one who have made my duty to follow the quarterly report. I must say, when you were finance minister, the public data for that went up on time. Since you left, I have not been receiving it.
Okay.
I'm saying it loudly, so probably those in authority could put it up on time. I'm not saying they
Yes.
don't do it, but it doesn't go up on time.
Okay.
Are you in a position to tell us how much persons have gotten Grenada citizenship and our passport during the period from 2013 until now? How much money the government has been able to garner from the investment of those persons? And what the money that are coming from CBI, what are they specifically used for? We know, like when we had Petro-Caribbean money would have used in social development and so forth. What is the CBI money being used for? I am also aware that in, I think 2018, or late 2019, we would have passed regulations for the contingency fund established with 40% of the CBI money. And I think it's a 5-member advisory board had to be established who would have given okay for spending such a money. It was not money for the government to just dip its hand to. Are you in a position to tell us who are these persons on the advisory board? I knew it would have had to involve someone from the ECCB. Can you tell us who are the members of that advisory board for the contingency
The numbers,
for the CBI?
yeah, the members are named, but I could tell you the honest truth, I wouldn't want to name them because I don't remember the names of the individuals right before me. I don't have it before me, but I'm sure that it was named. I just want to make the point. I can't tell you the amount of people who received citizenship. The report, as you remember, when I was Minister of Finance, was delivered to Parliament, and the numbers were given. So I can't tell you the amount. What I can tell you is an amount of money. If I knew about it, I could have presented, have that information available. All I can say is comparatively to 2019, we have more citizenship given than 2019 this year than last year, at the same time last year. And the resources are more than last year. In fact, we were worried because of the emphasis on Section 11 for the projects, that we would end up marginalizing Section 10, which is a significant aspects of government financing for capital projects. So at this point in time, I want to say that we have not, that has not happened. Section 10 is running better than it was last year. Not a lot better, but certainly better. So that, and don't forget, because of the number of major projects under Section 11 has been bringing in significant resources to the country. The use of the money, remember when we had the structural adjustment program, we had to agree that a certain portion of the resources have to be used to pay down debt. A significant amount, I think the percentage, I think it was about 40%, I can't remember, I may be wrong with the percentage, but a significant portion was supposed to go to pay down debt. And the capital projects was supposed to be, the NTF was supposed to be grant to the country, the fiscal situation in the country, and that has to be used for capital projects. So many times I hear the statement, well, pay them out of, or you're doing reasonably well with the NTF, the Citizenship by Investment Program. But we signed on to something which says that it has to be used for capital projects. And we've been getting significant support from the World Bank and international institutions because having stuck with those decisions. So it makes a lot of sense for us not to interfere with that. So far, I think we have gained almost $125 million from the international institution because of having stuck with these conditions that we are in, and we expect additional resources from IDA, which I mentioned before is almost free money. So I wouldn't want for us to interfere with that. Yes, we have committed to the contingency fund, and that has been also part of the process of government revenue. You have to put aside some monies for contingency fund in case we have any serious disaster. And that, of course, is still a commitment we have made and we are keeping.
In your deliberations in Parliament, when you spoke about Ambassador Newfield, you mentioned something that I think a lot of people did not understand clearly. And I want you to use this opportunity to explain that.
Right.
And I'm going to explain the scenario. You said that the project, according to the engineers, I think would have cost $30 million. However, he would have raised $50 million. And now he was requesting another $40 million in terms. Can you explain to the public how projects get money? When an approach is made, is the amount of passport given based on the size of your project?
Yes.
Or there is a constant flow? Explain that to the public.
Yes.
So we have a better understanding.
Let me just make, and that's not just for the Newfield project. And I was explaining that an investor comes in, the regulation by law, not for me, by law, Parliament, says that you must 20% of the overall cost of the project must be put in by the investor, 20% of the cost. In the initial stages, we did not stipulate, for example, that we have to be involved as a government to know exactly how these monies are used. That's the 80% earned by the investment program, by the passport, attaining of citizenship by individuals. And that's one of the reasons we had the debacle with Shrimp Farm, because I just mentioned a while ago, that individuals, when we assumed that they were investing the money and they were indicating so, we had a debacle. So that brought us clearly to one thing: we must have a clear understanding. So we insisted that there must be an account right? That each investor, the money goes in there, and government must have oversight on how these monies are spent. So that's one major thing. Most of the investors agreed to that condition and have been meeting it. I don't want to get into further conflicts in anything here, but I just want to make the point. Well, at least one individual didn't, up to now, have not signed on to this, and that is a necessity. Now, in the case of that project, as I mentioned before, what has happened is that the individual felt that although he invested 20%, he has to recoup that money, which goes completely against the policy of the law of the country. So there's no way we would agree to break that condition. So what has happened so far, as I pointed out, over $50-something million. I made one error, I said 37, was 40-something million, was the estimate given by the contractor. So there was an error at the Parliament. So he's now asking for $99 million for the construction. And of course, we said no, we can't agree to this. And I think that could have been triggered the problem as what happened.
Let me just understand it. The project, as we know, we see ongoing. The original request was for $40-something million.
The original request, yes, was for the construction of 20% has to be paid down.
Right.
And the cost, I can't remember what was the original number. All I can talk about is what is happening now on the ground. And that's why the CBI people asked for a consulting firm, engineering firm, to do an estimate of what is on the ground. And they were able to say it's about 43 or 44. I can't remember the exact number. And we know over $50-something million was already granted. But
So-
in addition, we found out that the monies for the CBI, instead of going directly to construction, was loaned to a company controlled by the gentleman, and he admitted that, which of course, in our view, goes against the fundamental rules of the parliamentary decisions.
So let me just understand it. His last request was for $99 million. That's the exact amount.
Yes, he did ask for that.
And that was to further invest
But he
in
claimed
in
that's for
hotels.
further expansion, but the cabinet did not agree on this.
Can you tell us the company that would have conducted the audit?
No, we do not audit now. PwC. The audit has not been done yet.
You said that the
No.
CBI
Engineering company did an assessment of the construction cost. The audit is now being done officially to tell us where these monies have gone. In other words, how much has been spent on construction and how much has been spent anywhere else. So PwC has been contracted by the CBI group to do a complete audit on the entire project and the financing of that project. So the report will be made available to the country and the individual involved.
So that report will be tabled in the Parliament?
Yes, it has to be, and I'll be proud to present it because I think it's important for the country to know. So there will be no further another shrimp farm.
I don't know how much time I have left, but my other question had to do, you kind of mentioned it a little bit. I would have seen a news item last night where someone was complaining about government decision to purchase that new thing for Grendeck, the engine, right?
Yes.
You mentioned it a little bit, but can you tell us if government would have sought funding for that, or it is the 16 million?
This Grendeck funds.
Or it is right.
Yeah, but that was the initiative was there before we took over. Right?
So that was just a completion of the initiative.
Yeah,
The purchasing of
we
it.
just continue to proceed with the initiative because we did not have any perception. There was a school of thought we could have moved into alternative energy and saved ourselves serious resources because fossil fuel generators would cost quite a bit of money, and alternative energy would be much cheaper. But the risk of knowing that some of the equipment are old and could break down on us, and facing the consequences of shortages, as our sister mentioned, we could not take. And therefore the decision was protect ourselves first. The loss of economic activity by the insufficient and irregular supply of electricity can be far more costly than the cost of a generator. So that's why we continue with the decision.
Brian, the recovery plan that was presented in Parliament focused heavily on construction and the tourism industry. We have since realized, well, you did mention how we're going to be dealing with the cement shortage, which cement is critical towards construction. We also have a mass increase, a mass display of vaccine hesitancy. Both are linked to the recovery plan. What is government's new approach to, or would they revise that recovery plan? What is the length of time for us to recover now? Looking at the plan that was already placed in Parliament, but the structure for reaching there is now appear to be lengthened. What is government doing to deal with that length because of the hesitancy?
Well, we still believe construction activities will be key to recovery. That is clear. And everything that's done, any problem that we have in there must be corrected, which is why we sought and receiving most likely support from the original institution to proceed to buy cement extra-regional. And that started coming in, so we should correct that problem. And I did mention the question of materials for construction, and they need to have more than one quarry and more than one asphalt plant, which will further give you more opportunity for supply in those areas and more activity in construction. So we believe that tourism, of course, with the opening of the border and, of course, in hotels coming back on stream as we vaccinate and more people come in under the conditions of the vaccination, we'd expect to see increase in activity there. And there is the Ministry of Tourism is working with the cruise ships, the possibility of cruise ship arrivals and under the condition of vaccination for all the persons on board. We're not going to yield on that condition. But we also believe that there are serious opportunities, education services with the St. George's University back up. And it looks like August, September, they indicated for the latest, and that all the students coming in will be vaccinated, only those who are vaccinated. And so far they're saying they're reporting serious success in getting students to vaccinate, to be able to come back in, and therefore the workers in the facility. And I just want to make the point, I hear some people talking about the employer can't force you to vaccinate. I just want to be clear, every one of us have a right to decide what we want to do. When there's an issue of health involved, clearly if there's a pandemic, there are some rules that we have to apply. My right not to vaccinate must not affect your right not to be infected. So you have rights, I have. So if an institution says you have to vaccinate, otherwise you can't be here, because if I allow you to be here and you infect somebody, they sue me. So I think people have to be very clear. While there is now a law that mandates vaccination, because I made the point already, because the more laws you pass, sometimes the less acceptability you get in terms of implementation. So we could pass laws, but sometimes we have laws and books right now that people don't pay attention to in some cases. Not that it's right, but it's certainly something that we have to contend with. So I think the question of the construction services, education services with St. George's University come back, and with the possibility of this additional university on stream, we'll see more and more opportunities for education in the country and expansion of opportunities in that area. So I think we might see probably a longer period for the level of development we want to see, and that's understanding, but I still believe that these are the key areas: tourism, construction, and educational services. And clearly we cannot forget agriculture, but certainly these first three will be the three major areas that will boost economic activity in the country as a whole.
Well, ladies, I know that a conversation with the Prime Minister can go on, but we've been here at it now for about an hour and a half, so I think we can wrap up. Prime Minister, any closing comments you'd want to make at this time?
Well, just to say it's just good to have our friends here today, and just to repeat to my friend Kalistra, I dictated that you should be invited in your capacity as an individual. So I just wanted to know that was the dictate I gave. I just wanted to say this, and it's nice to have you and the other members of the team here, and we'll continue to keep this format of consultation with the Prime Minister of the country on a regular basis. I want to thank you all for your questions and comments. I know I didn't have all the information you wished for me to have, and I didn't want to have to come in here with a bunch of other persons to answer questions. I thought I should take them on my own, and if there's information that you require, then certainly we can provide it. As I think some of the questions Linda asked with respect to citizenship and the monies received, these are public information, so there's no reason why we shouldn't give it. And I think the point you made that I have not been on top watching the website, so I can't tell you. I've seen, found out what you said is correct, but we certainly will try and correct this. I would inform the relevant authorities of the weakness, as you indicated, if that's the case. So I want to thank you all again for a very important and enlightening morning, and look forward to further engagement in the future.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister. Thank you to members of the media who have been present, to our audience on radio, television, and of course social media. Thank you for tuning in. We will be continuing these series of engagements, and you will be notified accordingly. I am Press Secretary Philomena Robertson. To have yourselves a pleasant day.